Thank you so much. So my name is Bill Kring, and in addition to my role as the Executive Director at the Global Development Policy Center, I oversee within our Global China Initiative our research on China and the international economic order. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, in the signing of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, provided the foundational framework for shaping the Bretton Woods system. And specifically, these arrangements set the rules for sustaining the core pillars of the liberalized capitalist system: trade, international finance, and development. China's accession to the Bretton Woods system, as most notably represented by its membership in the World Trade Organization, was perceived to signal the enduring nature of the Western liberal order, as opposed to a challenge against it. And while China has been an active participant in the institutions that anchor the Bretton Woods system, it has also created a system of alternative institutions. And the Global China Initiative at GDP Center grapples with this dichotomy and seeks to understand, through its empirical approach, China's engagement with the key pillars of the Bretton Woods system. Our evidence-based approach asks the following questions. To what extent is China engaged in the three pillars of the Bretton Woods system? To what extent has China created or joined alternative institutions that perform parallel functions in the world economy? And to what extent does China's movement in each pillar over time impact the ability of these institutions to provide the public goods that they were designed to provide? One of the core functions of the Bretton Woods system is, crisis finance or balance of payment support. When a country faces a rapid depreciation of its currency or a balance of payments crisis, traditionally countries would turn to the International Monetary Fund. While China is actively engaged and a member of the International Monetary Fund, it has also developed alternatives that have one foot in the traditional Bretton Woods system and one foot out. Portions of the lending firepower of these alternatives can be linked to the International Monetary Fund, while significant portions are explicitly delinked from the IMF, not requiring a country to go to the IMF and have a loan agreement in place to borrow. Our Global China Initiative tracks all of this lending capacity in the global financial safety net and studies the implications of this lending for the Bretton Woods system. At the International Monetary Fund, quotas are the building blocks of financial and governance structure. The quota of each member country broadly represents the relative position of that country in the world economy. Notably, China has demonstrated a significant increase in its quota share at the International Monetary Fund. Over the last 15 years or so, its quota has increased more than 60%. That said, despite the fact that China's gross domestic product in terms of purchasing power parity has outgrown the US through the last 2 decades, its voice and representation at the IMF still lags the United States significantly. Our research on quota reform at the GDP Center is actively studying voice and representation of the most vulnerable countries, as well as emerging market and developing economies, in advance of the IMF's general review of quotas slated for the fall of 2023. And finally, another area that's popular in the press and in conversation is China's impact in the international monetary system, and most notably, the increased usage of its currency, the renminbi. Part of our research at the GDP Center assesses both the current and future standing of renminbi in the international monetary system. The figure on the left illustrates the percentage change in the renminbi's usage over the last 5 years as compared with other major currencies. And the figure on the right illustrates the persistent dominance of the US dollar as the foreign exchange reserves across the world. Notably, and this is not in the PowerPoint, this figure, the renminbi's use in trade financing has actually declined over the same period. Our team at the GDP Center is tracking the renminbi's role as an international currency in the coming years to understand its implications for political economy and governance.